Welcome to today's webinar on the future of work, winning the talent race. I'm Nurhuda Syed from HRD Asia, and this webinar is jointly organized by WSG and HRD. Today we'll be talking about digital transformation and how it's changing the business landscape and the needs of an increasingly diverse workforce. We will address the key trends in Singapore and Asia Pacific. So stay to the end of the poll. We'll be having a few questions regarding the session today. We have with us three industry experts to lead the discussion. Dr. Christopher Fong, Principal Consultant at Sightline Consultants. We have Luke Clark, Senior Content Manager at PageGroup. And we have Nicole Scoble-Williams, Leader of Deloitte's Global Future of Work at Center of Excellence. So to start things off, Nicole, I understand Deloitte has done plenty of deep dives into the topic of future of work. So what does the future of work mean in today's job market?
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the webinar. I'm really delighted to be here. At Deloitte, we believe that we need to look at the future of work through the three dimensions of the work that's being done, the workforce doing the work, and that of course includes the humans and the machines and robots. And thirdly, the workplace, where and how the work is being done. And we believe that we need to think about all three together at the same time, because collectively, these three dimensions, they're creating an unprecedented rate of change in today's world of work, completely revolutionizing the way that we work, live and think. And of course, I think we all realize it's happening now. At the intersection of these new realities of work is the need to harness the collective intelligence of humans and machines working side by side as co-workers to accelerate our journey into the future. Most of us are probably familiar with the research that says, there are more than 50% of jobs being vulnerable to automation using technology today. However, when we look at individual occupations, there are essentially no occupations today in which all of the work that needs to be done can be completely automated 100%. So I think that there is increasing recognition that while we live in a world with extraordinary technology, it is and always will be the human potential that's driving us forward. So when we're talking about what the future of work really means, it really is all about this notion of collective intelligence, humans and machines and robots working together.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, rolling off from that, speaking about the future of work being full of robots and humans working together, Luke, I understand you're an expert in recruitment. So same question to you, but what does the future of work mean for recruitment?
Thank you, Nurhuda, and to Nicole. And on behalf of PageGroup, really happy to have this opportunity. I promise I won't present any robots during my talk. On the other hand, I will have a little bit of noise in the background because obviously our take on the future of work is a very busy one. Look, it's a very good question in terms of the future of work, and it's certainly something we've been spending a lot of time on, talking to leaders in Singapore and around the region and getting their understanding of the drivers of change for them, as well as some of the skill sets that they see as critical to making sure we optimize the future path to success. I think the future of work means a steeper change curve for all of us. What we're hearing is that change has been a constant for some time, but that the pace of change is more intense now than previously. Obviously, the rise in automation and machine processes, as you mentioned, will mean changes in people's job roles and scope. Technology and data roles for Page in particular are becoming more sought after than ever. But allied to this is also the role of leaders and hiring managers in becoming ever more critical to the piece. Leadership is more complex now, more outward facing and more integrative as a function than ever before. And the more diverse and skilled our teams become in terms of skill sets, the more demanding they are on leaders of a different, more progressive style of leadership. I guess for hiring managers, the key is really to ensure that the employee experience is a positive and cohesive one, and that development and training continue to be visible and meaningful. Having moved from a sort of customer experience or CX world, we're moving really into another world, which is a EX or employee experience world. Many realize that to win the talent race, employee hiring, retention, and development becomes paramount. And EX is certainly a good way of measuring how future-proof your company is. Lastly, I think it's key to remember that to attract critical skill sets, we as leaders need to be challenged. And as such, we really need to look at whether the way we work is as creative and as future-proof as it could be. And I'd say as a check for this going forward, ask whether or not we have diverse and enabled teams. Ask whether talent that's expected to lead from all levels can do, and to integrate and support their success, develop team cultures that support risk-taking, fairness, and creativity. The hierarchy-based work structures is certainly not, I think, supportive of innovative people. And lastly, in summary, I guess the good news, Nurhuda, is that for those who fear boredom, the future of work looks great.
Thanks very much, Luke. Okay, so just running off from that on the intersection of employee experience and customer experience and the changing of culture. Dr. Fong, just from your perspective, what does the future of work mean for the job market?
Okay, just before I start, I'd like to wish good morning to our listeners. Also, thank you to Nicole and Luke, and also to you for hosting me. As an organizational psychologist, to give a perspective of the future of work, if I could add and value add to my two other colleague speakers, the three W's. One is about the worker, the other one is about the work, and I think one area, the other W is about worry, consider the worrisome issues of the workers. If I could go one by one, we talk about the work. Of course, my fellow speakers already mentioned. I think one area of the work would be, of course, moving into technology, as we've all heard, AI, digitalization, and automation. These are pervasive, and as a result, the worker would need to be skilled, be trained, and relearn. Specifically, if I could identify this worker, would be more the aging workforce. They would need to do more relearning and reskilling. The other concern is about the different generational diversity, the new generation. How does organization mitigate and put in place the different the expectations of this new younger generation, who do not tend to be staying in an organization for long. They will not be building sort of like a long-term career in a certain organization, but they would like to move on. The next W about worry. There is, of course, this concern. Worries about concern about whether the security of my job, where's my job going, especially in the Singapore context. I think it's important to put in place things like career coaching, career mentors, to assist these workers who are going through these, what we call the disruption right now in our industry. So basically the three W's to be considered would be the worker, the work, and the worry. Yeah, that's from me. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Dr. Fong. So following up on that, we'll just go up to market trends. So as we have somewhat defined the future of work, Nicole, what do you think are some of the current market trends happening, and how has it changed in the last few years?
Great question, Nurhuda. And, I think this is something that fascinates me most, watching our research over the last few years and seeing the trends emerge. Firstly, one that really surprised me 1 year ago was when we look at the impact of regulation, that impact on the future of work and on our workplace today didn't even feature at all when we did research 2 years ago as one of the disruptive drivers in this new world of work. And yet when we repeated that research 1 year ago, it was one of the top priority issues for organisations. So that was fascinating. Another interesting trend is the lack of trust in government to solve for some of the challenges associated with the future of work. And interesting, alongside that, is this rising expectation on businesses to solve for some of the challenges associated with things like skill gap, education, and employment, which is becoming increasingly important. And that was a trend that we saw emerge last year in our 2018 Human Capital Global Trends report, and it was reiterated in our newly published 2019 Human Capital Global Trends report just recently. But I think the most important trend is the emergence of skills becoming the new currency for work. This shift from jobs to learning. I think we now see learning in the flow of work becoming the burning platform. We now have skills, in some cases, expiring in less than 2 years. And we also know that we need around about 100 days of learning per year in order to keep our skills relevant. So learning must become integrated into the flow of our work, into the flow of our life. And that was really highlighted in our 2019 Human Capital Global Trends report that really focused on the fact that technology has leaped ahead of leaders and organisations, and we now have the human element trying to catch up. And in that research, again, in terms of learning, we had 86% of respondents say that they believe they must reinvent their ability to learn. 84% of respondents, along the lines with what Luke was talking about, said that they need to rethink their employee experience to improve productivity. And then we had 80% believe that they need to develop leaders differently, which again, I think is on point with what you were talking about earlier, Luke. So I feel that when we're talking about trends, we've started to shift away from just focusing on the technology, the machines and the robots. And there is this emerging recognition on the critical importance of the human element as a strategic priority.
Thanks very much, Nicole. Okay, Nicole focused on a lot of things like skills gap and skills being the new currency. Luke, what are your thoughts about this, and what are some of the market trends on your end?
Yeah, certainly what we describe to both clients and candidates every day, the way that the work conversation is changing from one about being a job role-based conversation to one being a skill set-based conversation. And I think being able to understand, communicate, and broaden your skill sets is certainly a key demand for the future of work. In terms of market trends going forward, we've been conducting a big campaign in the region called Tomorrow's Talent, whereby we've been speaking to the C-level in some of our key disciplines, including HR, technology, sales, and finance, about what they see as key trends and drivers of change. Broadly speaking, we see three broad trends, both within Singapore and region-wide, as impacting hiring. First of all, this incredible opportunity that's presented by data and by new technology, which is making many jobs more insights-based and eventually more predictive than before. So skill sets around data and storytelling within the business with that data are certainly in hot demand right now. And you'll see in our jobs banks, data architects, analysts, data scientists being very keenly sought after in Singapore. What data means to all of us in practical terms will be that there will be more roles that become, as I say, future-facing. We'll become more involved in spotting trends and then placing action on those trends in a quarterly manner. And what technology means to all of us is, put simply, all our roles will increasingly be technology and digitally focused, which means we need to be experts not only in our field, but also understand where the machines can help and where our roles interact with the automation. Second trend, and I guess aligned to this, flexibility is becoming a major strength of leading companies. This allows firms to have better retention. Flexibility enables teams to better integrate work and life needs. And it allows employees and employers more access to highly skilled part-time or gig economy expertise. Flexibility is about setting work up so that accountability can firstly be clearly demonstrated, and then allowing that great work can be performed in office or outside of it. I spoke to Alexandra Levitt, who's a leading author and workplace futurist and advisor to the Obama administration. And she said one of the key things she would advise leaders to do right now is to systematize your flex workforce. Clearly, most companies already use flex workers or freelancers, contractors, if you like. She feels, however, that the planning is currently all over the place. So she sees the key is to gather together a strategy that can make that far more useful and meaningful, and then track metrics associated with it. Acting now, obviously, as a company provides a perfect platform as the market evolves and the pace quickens up. PageGroup too sees a rising demand in Asia for contract roles, and we're working closely on that. Thirdly, we see a rising need for interpersonal skills, such as intuition, creativity, and influencing. And as Levitt herself said, as you move forward, as knowledge becomes something that automation can look after, human skills, you can't really go wrong with making sure you're really strong in areas like interpersonal conflict resolution, diplomacy, empathy, judgment, intuition, creativity, and innovation. And for all of us, in terms of subject experts, I think it's really important that those become a key part of that learning process that Nicole described. Nurhuda?
Thanks very much. So I hear a lot of talk of just the focus on the human despite technology taking over. So Dr. Fong, what are your thoughts on the market trends, especially since you mentioned things like about the aging society and the multi-generation workforce?
Yeah, if I could just scope it into 5 areas, A, B, C, D, E. A, number 1 is about analytics. As an academic myself, we do a lot of research, writing papers and publishing papers and all that. I think analytics is moving into predictive analytics. This predictive analytics is not just merely for research purposes, but towards innovation. It's supposed to inform businesses as to where the growth markets are, where the goal is. It's more predictive analytics. And these predictive analytics, if I could divide it into, would be more big and deep data. So analytics is going to be one of these emerging trends coming up in the market. The B part would be more behavioral assessments, batteries. HR is, I'm glad to hear that HR is moving more into using behavioral assessment tools to better their processes in selection and recruitment for the sake of identifying workers with more human skills like EQ and stuff like that. The C part will be pervasively cybersecurity because of the PDPA and issues of fake news, etc. These kind of trends, cybersecurity, jobs in cybersecurity is going to pick up quite a bit. The D part will be very interestingly recent. We did a recent research on diaspora, the dispensation of talents. We see a trend where local workers will be migrating to other countries to work. Foreign talents will be coming over to, like say, for Singapore to work. Foreign talents, Singaporeans will be moving out. So this dispensation of talents, this migration of talent going overseas, this push factor, where opportunities are beyond the shores of Singapore. This trend is happening currently as well. The last one, the E, is one in the 2018 Deloitte Global Trend Report about employees' wellness. If I could scope this employee wellness, it's about person-centered, exactly what Luke was saying. It's also trying to build the competency, the human competencies of the workers, like EQ skills, cultural intelligence, social intelligence, apart from just work competency. The people skills part is going to be very, very current and very needed, especially in this age of future of work. Yeah, this A, B, C, D, if I could repeat, A is analytics, B is behavioral assessments, C, cybersecurity, D, dispensation of talents, E, employee wellness. And with that, thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Fong. So just following up on that, Dr. Fong, how can businesses prepare for the future and all the changes?
One of the things is about how do we now identify or rather define talent? Yeah. Do we define talent based on capability, competency? Okay, in this times of disruption, for the sake of towards business returns. Yeah. If I could give you a model which I use, it's actually A plus I equals to B. A being analytics plus I innovation equals to business returns. Yeah. So we see that jobs are moving into these areas. A being analytics, just analytics alone for the sake of anything is not going to help if it doesn't point to innovation towards business. Yeah, that's one. The other one is about flexi hours. There's going to be lots of more flexi hours, people working from different points of work. It could be home, it could be a cafe, it could be anywhere. The other thing is also, we notice a trend of this urban planning. Offices and businesses, in the central business district are moving into various suburban places, the decentralization of businesses. And this is a good sign because it will help the people around, to give jobs around those suburban places where they are relocating. So we see this business moving up from the central business district, the CBD areas, into more suburban areas. The other one is, I think employees these days are looking more for, they're looking for higher stake, meaning they want more say. It's not so much the just simply vertical, but also the horizontal part of work, in the organizing hierarchy. People are looking to have more say, more opinions as to contribute to the business. And also, as a result of that, their CVs have to be very broad. The depth, the height, the width. That means cross functions, not just only in one role, but various roles, cross metrics. This we hope to see more, especially in their CV. Yeah, that's from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Fong. Nicole, how about you? What are your thoughts on how businesses can prepare for the future of work?
A wonderful question. It's the question that we have to answer most at Deloitte. We believe that future readiness involves 3 key shifts. The first one is all around becoming agile or adaptive by design. This notion of working through cross-functional networks of teams that are purpose-driven and really focusing on user-centric business missions. The second one is around developing leaders with a founder's mindset. Luke talked earlier about the shift in leadership requirements. And if we think about startup founders and their relentless passion and belief in their big ideas and their way to bring those ideas to life in the way that they drive that connectivity and collaboration across the ecosystem, we can see the impact of that founder's mindset. And then the third shift is around augmenting and unleashing the workforce. So using the technology to automate work or to augment human capabilities to be able to create new capacity, as well as tapping into the open talent economy to be able to access skills at the speed that we need them. I think most importantly, whether we are thinking about this as an organisation, a leader or a worker, we must focus on the fact that the future of work, yes, it's creating unprecedented opportunity, but it is really about so much more than just opportunity. And that it really is an imperative that we embrace what I call the 3 C's. So the first is courage, the courage to own our destiny. You know, we need to be the creators of the disruption, not just focusing on how do we adapt to the disruption, constantly challenging the status quo, experimenting and taking risks. The second is around constant change. In today's digital age, it's no longer about being able to predict the future. It's all about building the new muscle that is required to constantly change and adapt to the ever-changing disruptive drivers and new realities of work. And this means constant reinvention to make sure that we're remaining relevant and competitive. And I think, you know, we've already heard a lot, for example, about data. You know, it means we all are going to need to be data fluent. We all need to be able to understand how to interact with and cooperate with machines. And then the third C would be all around the sense of community, recognising that the complexities of the business problems we need to solve for today are continuing to increase exponentially. And we can no longer solve those at the speed that we need to by ourselves. We need to immerse in, engage, contribute to the broader ecosystem, both internally, externally, to really be able to drive a competitive strategy that responds to the speed of today. Because ultimately, we need to be able to think big, start small, and move fast.
Okay, last up, Luke, how about you? How do you think businesses can prepare for the future of work?
Well, I think it's first of all just to take a break and absorb all this amazing information, much of which we've been sharing today. And I think very much to embrace the future of work is the right word. I think leaders need to start by having a plan and talking through that plan in terms of what's going right and where the business wants to go from here. And selling a plan both internally and externally is very much a part of today's leadership. In many ways, I completely agree on the word that Nicole used earlier, which is agility. We all have to adopt practices similar almost to those in the startup world. Entrepreneurs have known about being agile, being open-minded, being powered by data for some time. And I think we all need to adopt that mindset at any level of the company. And I think companies and leaders can do this and start doing this by addressing their own barriers to innovation. And by enabling those versed in the digital age, some of them maybe younger to the leadership, to really move forward at steady pace and to question whether there really is leadership and the ability to move forward at all levels. As I talked previously, hierarchies do get in the way of this. It's not all macro either, and as a hiring company, I would be remiss to talk about some of the obvious back to basics things that we as leaders and hiring managers need to do. Looking at hiring processes is really a key to winning the talent race. You have to be able to move fast and move first on the person that you want to bring in. And if you really have a slow hiring process, you will miss out. It's also how we present the company to these future skill sets that we're bringing in, and then how we integrate and motivate our new hires. Because obviously hiring is one thing, but retention is the key as well. And then training, and this is still, I guess, one of those areas that for many of us is still a question mark. And I think you could probably have a whole seminar on this. Nicole referred to the importance earlier of this, and I believe it's a massive one. I also believe relative to the situation we have, it's an unanswered question. Adult learning, in-job learning is something that I don't really believe the workplace in Singapore is yet fully equipped for. Just looking at some of the feedback that we've had today, we really see a lot more cross-pollination going on in terms of hiring, and that's something that I think has been reflected in this conversation today. So companies, for instance, are requesting profiles from many different disciplines, whereas many in finance would have once asked for or strictly banking profiles. Now they're looking for people, for instance, from technology backgrounds. Secondly, that there was some chat about the broadening of CVs and having more cross functions in there. Absolutely. I think taking on project work and taking on the ability to look at different projects and demonstrate some familiarity with those topics is a must. Cybersecurity, we're seeing, especially this year, last year, a massive demand in Singapore for the so-called white hats, the ethical hackers. We're also looking a lot here and abroad at this diaspora of talent. And I think you will start to see increasingly a demand for returning talent to Singapore from elsewhere. Those who went to Silicon Valley, I think you will see certainly government bodies, as they are in other countries, reaching out to some of these and saying, hey, come back, because the workplace is ready for you, and we have some great roles for you. And I guess just to sum up, it's important to be mindful also of what hasn't changed. I think, things that have always got us far in work will continue to do so. Passion, ethics, grit, and this joy of getting results and solving problems. I think those will always matter. Last point, I guess, to employers and to hiring managers, there clearly is not one single future of work. Companies that seize the initiative and that embrace a people-first mindset, and then that make the journey fun in the process, I think will certainly be those better placed to win the talent race. Nurhuda?
Thanks very much, Luke. That's very right, and that will actually be applicable for everyone, that it's still about passion, it's still about ethics, it's still about the human employee.
Very much.
Yeah, just we've had some questions come in from our audience, so we'll just have maybe one or two as a Q&A. Just the first one, it can go to anyone on the panel. It's a lot of talk of change and how businesses can transform, but how can HR leaders lead this transformation? Dr. Fong or Luke?
Shall I go
I'll
first?
jump.
Okay,
Yeah, please do.
Sure.
Please.
I think first the question was asking for HR leaders. How can HR leaders lead this transformation?
Yes.
Like I said earlier, I think it's how do you define the word talent? From the perspective of, is it capability you're looking for, competency, and capacity loading, but it's towards what's the business strategy. I think we need to look from the end in mind, basing on the business strategy and how do you identify, and define the word talent towards contributing to that business strategy. And if the HR leaders is able to do that and building up a capability map, I think this will really, really help. Yeah.
Luke, how about you? Do you have any thoughts on how HR leaders can lead the transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our research is showing very much that HR leaders and the new HR leaders of tomorrow are a critical part of this process. First of all, I think many of them are very much involved in digital transformation, very much involved in making sure that the companies are equipped with the talent, the product mix, and the right skill sets to move forward in what we see as the sort of fourth industrial revolution or the digital age. And I think HR plays a massive role in that, both to ensure that the right skill sets are brought in, but also, as was observed earlier, to ensure that when the job functions change, and many of them do change very fast, that the teamwork and the glue of that teamwork really continue in terms of the new tasks needed. Secondly, I think HR plays a massive role in supporting the leadership function, to enable the leadership function, whether it's a group of leaders or a single leader, to be well supported. And the future proofing, I think, is part of enabling the leadership function to really speak the language of internal and external need, and also be socially enabling, be speaking the language of the companies on all these different platforms and channels that we have today. And that's not as easy as it used to be, particularly in an age of quarterly reporting and the importance of that. And then lastly, I think talent development and talent retention are the other keys in terms of that. And again, I think we could have a whole seminar on that. So vitally important would be my summary.
Thanks very much, Luke. You're right. I think if we continued on, we'd have to have a whole seminar on the topic of future of work. Okay, we've unfortunately run out of time. Thank you very much, Dr. Fong, Luke, and Nicole, for your time and speaking to us. So to sum up, even though there's a lot of focus on technology in the digital disruption era, businesses and HR leaders have to focus on the finer aspects and focusing on the employee and the difference and making them better workers to improve their productivity. Okay, I think a lot more questions have come in. Maybe we'll take one or two. Hold on, yeah. Okay, so our audience wants to know this, so maybe we'll just slot in this question. Okay, Nicole mentioned one. Hold on. Nicole mentioned one of the 3 C's as constant change and building that muscle to allow people to adapt to change. During the hiring process, is there a way to determine if the candidate has it, and how do we determine it during the interview? Luke, I think this is your area of expertise. Do you care to answer that?
Yeah, definitely. And look, this is not necessarily something that I do every day, but I do sit on the sales floor, many of whom are obviously behind me today, observing how this is done, and also talking to HR leaders. I think there's a real role for role play actually in the hiring process, and moving away from your traditional questions, those that many of us can prepare very easily for. So I think first of all, there are good projects and products in the market to look at in terms of some of the ways to test talent, but also I think in many cases it's about having a test of some sort. Not necessarily a take-home test, although as a writer and editor, I would do a take-home test. But I think in some ways to really look at the list of skill sets and of projects that person has done, and talk through some of the scenarios towards success. And I think there is some very good literature in the market in terms of specialization in that, and making sure that you are a little bit prep proof. Dr. Fong, I'm sure you have some insights to that as well.
Yeah, fully agree, Liu. If I could put it in an ABC, like what Liu has mentioned, there are a lot of assessment tools out there. Using these tools to sort of give you some form of indicators, where the bandwidth of the incumbent. The other one is also about having this what we call behavioral interview skill. Behavioral events interviews. Having interviews of this potential. The other C would be having, like what you was mentioning, having conversations. To discuss about the milestones which is being articulated in the CV, and to dive deep, as to what some of these challenges, faced, which was being highlighted in the CV. So having conversations, specific conversations to understand the bandwidth of the potential is important. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. I mentioned we've run out of time, but then I think the audience is quite engaged, and we have one last question to share. Okay, so one of our audience members wants to know, there's a lot of stakeholders in the whole process of decision making. So for HR leaders and all these leaders making decisions about talent, it's a really valuable thing to have a faster process, whether it's in hiring or promoting and things like that. How can they make it faster?
Yeah, very good question. I think first of all, it is about HR as the leadership function and as the talent hiring function, really setting some of the rules of engagement for this. And certainly there are some roles that we see very clearly move very fast. So part of it, I think, is about the project management part of it, really preparing internally for what could be a quick process. And I don't think it's a matter of being a problem when there's a no, but I think when there's a yes, I think it's a big problem if companies are waiting too long over a hire that really is a yes, because companies do miss out in that environment. And then I think the other point is to have somebody close at hand, and obviously recruiters are quite adept at doing this, who can really sit with the person in terms of on the phone and point by point explaining what's going on in the background, because we do have corporate entities, we do have processes, absolutely, and that's unavoidable. But there's nothing, there's no replacement for just explaining what's going on and why there might be a delay, and reassuring the person that how excited you are to bring them in. Dr. Fong.
Yeah. I believe, these days, HR is partnering with the department heads to be part of the interview selection panel as well, which is very good. Recently, there was an article about culture is strategy. Strategy is culture by the CEO of Netflix. I think this is where the HR can add a lot of value by articulating and measuring what the company's culture is all about. And in terms of the competency, the deep skills, I think this is where the department head will come in and to ascertain the level of this potential. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Fong, Luke, and Nicole again. Okay, I think there's no more questions from the audience. And if there are, I think we can always drop an email. I think we'll follow up with that. Right now, I think we've come to the end. So as I mentioned early on, there'll be polls. So just drop an answer and I'll announce the answers in a bit.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nurhuda.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll just give it a few seconds. Okay, the first poll question is done. I think we'll go on to the second one. So the second one is on what were you hoping to know more about on this topic or on future topics? So this is exactly what we want to continue on from this webinar. Future of work discussion shouldn't just stop on today. Okay, so there's a majority saying they want to know more about how HR can play a more strategic role in the process. All right, let's go a few seconds more and then we'll close the poll. All right, so the majority of people really want to know how HR can play a more strategic role. And then follow up, people want practical tips on how to prepare for disruption. And all the tactics about transforming the workforce and change management. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for participating and staying through the whole webinar. It was a very engaging discussion with Dr. Fong, Luke, and Nicole. Thank you very much for attending today, and hope to have a chance of having more panels in the future. Thank you very much.